Hello and welcome to the No Splinters YouTube channel. This is my name's Harry Lister and this is the No Splinters page. Today we're just going to have a chat about some of the boxing news and obviously what's going on in the world. It's been a busy few months for boxing. Just thought we'd give a bit of an overview on what's going on and obviously some opinions, which is what we're good for. Obviously, I don't think there's anywhere else to start than the lightweight division, I suppose. In my opinion, the best division in boxing, comfortably. Super exciting, obviously, what's going on down in the 135 category. You look at it, obviously, coming up, we've got on the 5th of December, Ryan Garcia versus Luke Campbell. From a British aspect, obviously, we've got Luke Campbell, but in terms of for the future of boxing, I think Ryan Campbell's a super exciting prospect. Offers a lot. Is obviously, I think he's got 7.5 million followers on Instagram, loads on Twitter and YouTube and stuff, and he's sort of high profile in that social media influencer world. Luke Campbell's obviously not. He's an Olympic gold medalist and he's fallen short of a world title on a couple of occasions, losing obviously famously to Lomachenko last year in August. But it's a fight that we should all be looking forward to, and obviously the winner technically becomes the mandatory for Devin Haney for the WBC belt. But see, there's not just those two in the division. Obviously, we've got Teofimo Lopez, who won comfortably against Lomachenko in what was one of the biggest fights of the year. Super fight, really impressive to see Lopez, who's obviously only 23 years old, demolish a future Hall of Famer, a legend of the sport, Lomachenko. Obviously, most people say he isn't a 135-pound fighter, but Lopez put him to the sword and absolutely demolished him. It was a great performance. I mean, one of those that was on early in the morning or late at night, whichever way you sort of wanted to stay up for it or get up. But awesome to see Lopez sort of cement his place as the king of the division. And since then, we've only had interesting fights. Obviously, the week or two later, we had Tank Davies, didn't he? Demolished Leo Santa Cruz in the super featherweight division / sort of a lightweight division. I mean, I think there was belts for both divisions on the line, so quite a complicated one. But knockout of the year, I mean, poor Alexander Povetkin must have thought he had that nailed fighting in the back garden at Matchroom, but absolutely devastating uppercut from Tank Davies, and sort of one of those shots that just sets your name in lights, doesn't it? I mean, he's already a big name. I was impressed by the numbers. I think it did 250,000 pay-per-view buys, which in a climate as it is at the moment is mighty impressive. You've got to think Fury and Wilder, two massive names, both heavyweights, both unbeaten at the time, and it was a huge production. This is the first fight. Did about 300,000 buys in the US, and obviously Tank's not too far behind that. Two lightweight guys. I mean, I know obviously Leo Santa Cruz had some monster fights over the years, and he's a multiple weight world champion, but it's not. It wasn't as hyped as sort of the heavyweight fights, and I thought good numbers, and obviously he's a Mayweather fighter, isn't he? So obviously the Mayweather magic can rub off on Tank Davies. Whether he's got enough to beat the likes of Teofimo Lopez remains to be seen. I'd personally love to see Tank in with Lomachenko at 130, maybe even a 132 catchweight sort of level. I think that'd be super exciting, and obviously that'd be a real test. And good to compare against what Teofimo did. But then Devin Haney fought Gamboa this weekend. Obviously Olympic gold medalist. Gamboa, multiple unified world champion. Over the hill, I think he's 38 when he went in. And Tank had obviously beaten him previous last year, knocked him out in the 12th round. Devin Haney couldn't get him out there, but won 12 rounds on 2 scorecards and 10 on the other. Caught most of the fight, and it was an impressive performance from Haney without sort of setting the world alight. There's a lot of hype about Devin Haney, and obviously it's going to be interesting to see sort of how the career path over the next 2 years unfolds. Him versus Teofimo, him versus Ryan Garcia, him versus Tank Davies, Tank versus Teofimo, Ryan Garcia. At the end of the day, I don't believe Ryan Garcia's got the boxing ability to beat any of those three at the moment, but he's got the star power. He's going to be. I mean, obviously he's in Golden Boy Oscar De La Hoya's stable, but he is the next sort of Golden Boy, isn't he? He's the golden child. He is the suit. If he is the best, he is going to be bigger than in Mayweather, in my opinion. I think he's got that universal appeal. Girls love him, boys love him. if he can fight as well, I mean, it's a dangerous combination. Obviously, can talk the talk, super fast hands. You see him on Instagram, and a lot of people I know follow him just for his hand speed, and they sort of know about Ryan Garcia, and he's famous for that. Which it doesn't really matter how you're famous, I suppose, as long as people buying your fight and buying tickets. It's that's what sells. And I mean, it was noticeable from Bob Arum, who came out and straight away said that Teofimo wanted Ryan Garcia, which is interesting, because obviously if you're going to test yourself against the best, I suppose Devin Haney's the next rank cab off the shelf, and also whether or not people will argue till the hills come home or whatever it is. But whether he's got the email belt or whatever, Devin Haney does have the only remaining title that is in the lightweight division. He does have the WBC belt. Obviously, Teofimo Lopez now has the franchise belt, but Devin Haney's got a clear say in ownership of being a world champion. I mean, he is technically a world champion, and that fight, if it were to happen, would be branded as the undisputed. So it'd be interesting to see who comes through sort of the battle of those four or five fights. Obviously, interested moving on from Ryan Garcia in the Golden Boy stable to Canelo. We had some massive news breaking this week that Canelo's left DAZN and left Golden Boy. He's been exonerated of all sort of rights, I suppose, and desire to sort of complete his contract that he had with DAZN, his 11-fight deal for 300 or 350 million or whatever it was. Obviously, he fought against Rocky Fielding in that first fight, and then he obviously came through with a fight against Danny Jacobs, and then Kovalev for the light heavyweight title. And obviously there's been a lot of criticism on both fronts. People criticised Canelo for not fighting the best. I mean, it's pretty clear that DAZN wanted the Canelo versus Triple G 3 fight. I mean, they signed Triple G and paid him silly money. I think he fought Steve Rolls and Divonchenko. So it's interesting to see. I mean, that was the fight that DAZN wanted, but obviously it couldn't be made. You look at it, and Triple G is sort of, there's no point really for DAZN anymore. If they don't get the Triple G fight on DAZN, it's sort of an irrelevant fighter for them. It's not someone who's going to draw the numbers in by himself, especially at this stage of his career. So it's a huge loss for DAZN. There's no doubt the reason they signed Canelo onto a huge deal was because he is the golden boy of boxing in terms of the leading light, especially in America. Obviously, you look at now the way the heavyweights have come through with Wilder and Joshua. I think after that, obviously, Canelo's a real subscription driver for them and did clearly massive numbers. And it's a real shame, obviously, to see. We just want to see Canelo out. I mean, people say he's scared or whatever of fighting the best, and he doesn't want to fight whoever it is, whether it be Billy Joe Saunders or Callum Smith. I think for the British fight fans, it's a massive shame, because obviously you look at DAZN are entering the market. It's a $199 a month that's coming from December, and we have both British fighters that were in the DAZN stable in terms of Billy Joe Saunders and Callum Smith, as I say, and I just don't see how any of those two guys are going to be able to get the fight. I think unless they go onto another channel, they're not going to get the Canelo fight now. It's gone, it's done, it's dead in the water. I mean, he's not going to fight in DAZN, you wouldn't have thought. I mean, obviously he's now freelance. He said he's going to take the best offer. He's going to self-promote himself. But you think it would take a lot of money for him to fight on DAZN for a one-off fight. And I don't think those two lads are sort of going to be in with a shout. There's obviously talk of fighting Caleb Plant, I believe, on Showtime or PBC sort of platform. And I think that ship has sailed for those guys now. Canelo, I don't believe he's a 4-weight world champion. I think it's nonsense. Obviously, he did win the light heavyweight belt against Kovalev, but when he fought Rocky Fielding, it was for a regular title. I mean, was it the WBA regular? In my opinion, he's never been a super middleweight champion. Super middleweight is his weight. It will be his weight, and that's sort of going to be where he's going to fight over the next couple of years. But he isn't a super middleweight champion, so he's got to fight one of the belt holders. You look at, I think the WBC belt might be vacant. I mean, they obviously made an offer for the vacant belt for Canelo versus, can't even remember who it was now. Was it Yildirim or someone? Canelo versus Yildirim. That was obviously mandated from the WBC for the vacant belt, which just sort of sums up the WBC. They're an absolute fucking shambles. To boxing. I mean, I know a lot of people praise with the work they do with doping and stuff, but in terms of you look at the way they've entered the franchise belt, and sort of the way they've dealt with mandatories and the logic behind diamond belts, and they just really are a terrible organisation. And Mauricio Sulaiman comes in for a lot of flack, and I think it's deservedly so. Interestingly, Mike Coppinger from The Athletic sort of put him to the sword on a podcast recently, which was good to see him come under flack, because a lot of people just suck up to him because he's fairly powerful in boxing. And obviously the green belt is notoriously the most important. You hear the likes of, I mean, even Anthony Joshua said it recently, and Tony Bellew, in terms of that green belt is an important belt, and it's sort of, boxers want to sort of get that one. It's the most famous belt in boxing, there's no doubt about it, but the WBC have let themselves down over the last 5-6 years, and I just think mandating a fight between Canelo and Yildirim sort of sums up the shambles of themselves. But where Canelo goes from here, obviously there's Caleb Plant out in the division. I mean, I'd love to see him fight against one of the British lads personally. I think he would make light work of Billy Joe Saunders, but Callum Smith is just such a big... He's a big, heavy fighter. I mean, there's no doubt that Callum Smith could go up to 175, and whether he'd compete or not remains to be seen. But there's no doubt that he's a 175 fighter in his locker. And Canelo, he is a super middleweight now. There's no doubt about it. Obviously, he's gone up to light heavy, and he did beat Kovalev, who was way past the hill. You look at the way that Anthony Yarde sort of gave him a good scrap. So it'd be interesting to see, but I'd love to see Canelo versus Callum Smith, to be honest with you. There was obviously a lot of chat about it at the end in sort of May, and it never materialised. But we'll have to wait and see on that one. And another big story from America is Deontay Wilder. I mean, what's going on in his head? He needs counselling, I think. He needs help. He's a few sandwiches short of a picnic, and he's whatever Tyson Fury hit, however hard Tyson Fury hits him. I mean, he still feels the impacts. Obviously, there's all this talk about cheating and what was in his glove, what he was spiked. Mark Breland, how affected his water, and all this shite that's coming out of Deontay's mouth. It's just beggars belief. You look at the contradiction that he said. Anthony Joshua and Eddie Hearn never wanted no smoke and all that shite, and he comes out and says that he was offered far more money for Joshua and he turned it down to fight Tyson Fury. It's just typical of what Deontay Wilder is. I mean, I think to be honest with you, most top end fighters would make light work of him. I think Usyk would beat him fairly comfortably. I think Joshua would beat him fairly comfortably. Tyson Fury obviously took him to the cleaners. And there's no doubt he's a massive name and he's a massive draw, but he's an embarrassment. The obviously costume issue that came out, and I mean, there's sparring rumours, all this shite that Deontay spouted since he got well and truly mullered. It's just an embarrassment, really, isn't it? And I can't really see where he goes from here. I wouldn't be surprised if we never see him in the ring. I think Wilder's done. I think if he does come back, he's not going to come back. And I'd love to see the Andy Ruiz fight. I personally think it would be a very close fight. I think Deontay could definitely win. I think he'd only win by knockout. I think Andy Ruiz, if he was in good shape and fit, I think I'd favour Andy Ruiz. But it would be a massive fight and a huge thing that's in the PBC's interest. You look at two big fighters, the winner of that can go on to fight for a world title, hopefully, in the end 2022, once obviously Joshua and Fury's got out of the way. Or the Usyk belt, who knows? So there are options for Deontay Wilder, but personally, I think the way that he's talking, I'd be surprised if we ever saw him back in a ring. I think you just look at the flat that he's come in for recently, and it's weird. He's just a weird bloke, and he's saying that he wants to spit on people, and they better, all this Fury team, they better dig their graves and be ready. I mean, it's just dark. It's a bit weird. You get a lot of this excuse with Deontay Wilder that he's the Bronze Bomber. It's fight week. I'm the Bronze Bomber. I'm the Bronze Bomber to this day, and all that shite. But it's not Bronze Bomber talk, is it now? I mean, we're in November. He's not fought for 7-8 months. He's got no fight planned. He's just trying to be relevant. Obviously, there was no talk from Wilder until Fury sort of nailed on a fight with Campbell. So it's just there to stay relevant. You look at sort of the way that Deontay Wilder's career's gone. He's always dropped, like when Joshua versus Ruiz, he dropped the fight against Luis Ortiz. It's sort of when someone else is getting the limelight, like Fury and Joshua are at the moment. Obviously, he's now way past it, and he's yesterday's news. He's so far back in the queue that no one can see him. And it's interesting to know that that's sort of the man that Wilder's become. And obviously, the big fight between Joshua and Fury. I mean, I think we're all looking forward to it. worldwide, but especially in this country. I mean, people who think it's going to be in the UK are just absolutely clueless. There's zero chance, obviously, that happening, but hopefully the second fight will be. The first fight will obviously be a Middle Eastern fight, but it doesn't take away from the fact that it'll be a 10, 11 o'clock, maybe 9 p.m. first bell, and it's just going to be the biggest thing in this country in terms of one-off sporting event. Obviously, we have the Olympics, but in terms of a one-off event, I think nothing's going to rival the size of that fight. I think everyone's grands will be knowing what's going on. I think it'll be front page, back page, every talk show, every news channel will just be, the hype behind that will just be phenomenal. I mean, it'll be like nothing we've ever seen before, and for me, I cannot wait. I mean, I just want that to be made. I mean, who cares about the WBO belt and mandatories and all this shit? We all know that Joshua Fury, the winner of that, is the undisputed, unified, heavyweight, Ring Magazine, lineal champion. All the titles, throw it in the hat, and whoever wins, obviously, you get it all. It's all or nothing. I mean, the loser obviously doesn't. Still a great fighter, and obviously the rematch is there to be made, and there's an argument that you want to win the second fight. Obviously, I mean, winning both is the ideal, but if you can come back and win the second fight, it means that at the end of the 2-fight bout, you are the man, you have the titles, rather than the other way around. But I do think whoever wins the first probably will win both, but it's just going to be a monster. And for me, if there's one thing that is on my wish list for 2021, it'll be to be there live at a Joshua Fury event. I mean, after the year we've had, it's something to get excited for. I think there's anything else. Obviously, Usyk fight against Chisora looked all right. I mean, it looked decent. I think he'll fight Parker or Daniel Dubois in 2021 for the vacant belt, and favour him obviously, no matter who the opponent is, to win. Other sort of news, obviously, Dillian White has pulled out of his fight. Well, Dillian White's pulled out of his fight. Povetkin's had to pull out with COVID, so that's going to be rescheduled, and sort of it's a bit annoying for Dillian, because obviously if he'd have come through the fight against Povetkin, you'd have thought with Deontay Wilder pulling out or not even refusing to fight, that the WBC could have called that fight for Dillian, and they'd have got that on before Christmas, and the winner would have fought Joshua. Sort of it'd have been a battle of Britain again. Not to be, but obviously Fury hopefully is going to fight in December in an easy fight, which obviously is to be expected. That's sort of Tyson Fury, isn't it? He doesn't like a good resume, but I mean he fights the top boys. Obviously, if he fights Joshua and Wilder in his career and Klitschko, that's all that matters. If he comes through them all, then all the credit in the world. But it's typical of Fury not to put his name in with a dangerous opponent, but you can't blame him with the riches that are on offer for a Joshua fight. There's probably 100 million in the bank. I mean, coming up against somebody with no crowd, who knows how it could go. So you don't blame him, but obviously this weekend's Katie Taylor versus Gutierrez. I can't say I know much about Gutierrez, but obviously Katie Taylor is built as the biggest star in women's boxing. Whether it's true or not, I don't think it is, to be honest. But I think that's the Matchroom sort of the hype. She's the undisputed lightweight champion, and Gutierrez should be a run-of-the-mill fight from sort of the records that you look at. She's undefeated, but Katie Taylor shouldn't be too troubled. Terry Harper's on there in another world title fight for a unification, which would be good to see. I personally I slightly favoured her against Natasha Jonas, but I thought that was a cracking fight, and hopefully she can come through that and get the rematch on next year, and with a crowd. And Rachel Ball was supposed to fight Ebony Bridges, but that obviously got pulled out, and she's fighting for a vacant world title. She came through again. I favoured Rachel Ball when she fought Shannon Courtney. I had her up around. I mean, a lot of people thought it went the other way, but I thought Rachel Ball did the better work, hit the harder fights. Obviously, she did drop Shannon. So, yeah, and there's Jack Cullen, John Dock, which would be a good fight. Both, I think, have been out on the cards in Fight Camp. Cash Farouk's also on there. So, I mean, it's not a great card, is it? It's not something that we can all get absolutely buzzing about, but it'll be what it'll be. There's obviously, I think Conor Benn's going to be back in late November, taking ahead of that Dillian White fight on a Saturday night special. Billy Joe Saunders against Martin Murray, which would be a decent enough fight. So there's been a lot of quality fights, to say it's been behind closed doors. And obviously, we're all looking forward to the BT show with Joe Joyce versus Daniel Dubois. I mean, for me, I think the bookies got it all wrong. I'm put my neck out on the line and say that I think Joe Joyce wins that fight comfortably. I think his experience and his weight and his size will just be too much for Daniel Dubois. I think Dubois has to get him out early, or the fight's gone. I know I know he's slow and he's sluggish, Joe Joyce, but I just think he's such a big man and he's got such a good chin. It seems like he's got such good sort of ability to take a shot and sort of sluggish way, and he'll just get through fights. I'd be shocked, to be honest, if Daniel Dubois won. I think an Usyk and sort of quicker fighters in the division have got more of a chance against Joe Joyce. I don't think your big... I've watched a lot of Daniel Dubois and I just think he looks a good fighter. I don't think he's got the all-round package. I think he can bang. I think he hits hard, but I don't think he's got the boxing skill of a Fury, of an Usyk, as a Joshua. And I just see him getting outworked by Joe Joyce. I just think he's got a big tank on him, and he's a quality fighter. And it'd be great to see those two go at it. But for me, I just think Joe Joyce is a favourite in my book, and I make him. I think he's at 3-1 with some bookies. So if you're going to put a bet on, for me, tip of the month is backing Joe Joyce in that. And then obviously the big one, Joshua Pulev, to end the year. But sure, we'll speak a bit more about it later on. Obviously, give us a like, hit the subscribe button, and put some comments in there if you disagree. We're on Twitter and Instagram and stuff. So give us a follow, and obviously, if anyone wants to get in touch about anything, let us know, and hopefully we'll speak soon.